Welcome everybody to Janome Australia's Facebook Live Christmas with Janome. So I'm Kathy, I'm one of the educators here at Janome Australia, and over the next 45 minutes or so I will be showing you how to sew some Christmas decorations. So here is a sample of the project that we'll be working on. So you can see it's a wall hanging with Christmas sort of baubles that are decorated with decorative stitches. And we've appliqued them on, and then we've quilted the background. And there's a bonus little project at the end of the project sheet that you'll get that shows you how to also use the same little templates to make these little hanging bauble decorations using a variety of different Janome feet. So today I'm going to be working on a smaller sort of version, which is a placemat. So you can use these same shapes for decorating quite different things. Here I've got placemats. You could personalize these. You could make Christmas cards, wall hangings. You could put them into a larger quilt. And on our Janome Australia page, you will get the project notes, which has step-by-step instructions, plus you do have the templates to cut out for the shapes.
And that can also be picked up from their local.
And you can pick it up from your local dealer as well. So let's get started. So I'll get the camera to camera 1. So here I'll show you, we're going to first of all get our template sheet. So you will print off your templates. Then we will get some Vlisafix, heat and bond, any sort of double-sided sticky fusible material. There's various different brands on the market, and you'll see here with this one, it has a fusible sort of web. You can just sort of see that there, and sort of a paper backing. So they're all about the same. Some of them have got a web, some have got more a thicker sort of substrate. And you just take that and you can lay it down over your shape, and you can see this through. You can use light box if you need to, and we draw around. So here's one that I've drawn. And this is a different product. This one has got more of a sort of a fabricy sort of substrate to it. And this particular one is also sticky on the back. So you can see there's a, you can quite see. So I've got a paper backing here that you can see, and then I've got the substrate. So you want to always draw on the paper side for all of these products, depending on what brand you've got. You're then going to follow your manufacturer's instructions, and you're going to fuse it onto some fabric. So you can see here I've got the bauble shape, and I've got the little top of the bauble. So you want to do as many of those as you need. You can see here you only need smaller sort of scraps of fabric. So you can use up all your Christmas scraps if you've made a big quilt, or you can use solids like we have for showing all the decorative stitching. So once you've got that, you then want to cut out the shapes. So I'll just put that off to the side. You then want to cut out the shape. So we'll cut, let me get my scissors. So you can see here what I've done is on the fusible product, I have cut roughly around about 1/4 inch or so outside the actual line that I'm working on. Then when I go to cut the shape, it's going to give me a really nice edge. When I cut around the shape and cut it out. And then you get the fusible applique product all the way up to the edge of your fabric. Then you peel off the backing, and again following your manufacturer's instructions, you want to then fuse it onto your background fabric. So this is one of the placemats, and I've fused 3 different baubles on, or as you can see from the project, which is a longer sort of wall hanging, I've actually got 7 different shapes on there. So place them down in a, you can overlap some, you can have them by themselves, and place it down in a random sort of layout that you like. So this one, as I said, is a placemat, so I'm just doing the 3 on the side. So this is called raw edge applique, and that's because we've got a raw edge here that we're going to be stitching on.
Which
Oh, I am sewing on the Continental M7 Professional today. So if we swap over to camera 2, you'll see my screen. So your screen or your buttons on your machine may look different to this, but this is one of our newer machines that came out just late last year. And on here you'll see that I have all my stitches listed in the middle of the screen, and then information over here that shows me the actual stitch and the information about the stitch, the width and the length, needle position, things like that. So I'm going to go into decorative stitches. Now Janome icons are the same for all models, so if you have a model with a touch screen, you're going to be looking for this sort of double curly heart on the side, and that's your decorative stitches. If you don't have a computerized machine like this, you would just have to look at your stitch chart and choose an applique style of stitch that you like. So we're going to go into applique here, and I'm going to choose a stitch. So I'm going to go for stitch number 11 on this particular model, and it's got a 3 sort of stitch down and then 3 stitches out. So it's quite a sort of a bold applique stitch. And then you can see here on the side that it is turned into and shows me the stitch. I want something that's smaller than what the default is, so I can easily change this. We're going to go down to a 2.4 width and a 2.4 length. And if you need any more settings, we can open up our settings menu, and we do have thread tension and foot pressure as well. So if you need to make any of those changes, you can. We'll go back here. So now that we've got our stitch chosen, and I have already pre-threaded my machine, and I have put on my F foot. So most of our machines do come with a little F foot. I can hold it up here, and you will see right in the middle. Actually, I might go to the other camera. How about we go to this one and we can see it easy. Here we go. So here's my F foot, and you can see right in the middle there's this little tiny red notch. That is the center needle position. So that's a good one that you can use for lining up when I'm stitching around these shapes, that I've got my center needle position there. And this foot also has a section that's cut out in the middle at the back here, which allows for all your decorative stitches to form without them pulling on the thread. So I'll attach my F foot, and I will go up to the start. The other thing this particular machine has is a pivot function. So I will be turning my pivot on for going around a shape. And because I actually want to work on the opposite side of this shape, so at the moment the stitch goes from the left into the right, so I could stitch on the left hand side of my work and come down, but I want to stitch on the other side. I find it more natural for me. So this particular one I can mirror image. So depending on what your stitch is, that you have on your machine will depend on whether you're going clockwise or anti-clockwise. So I'm going to go to the start of where my work is, and I'm going to drop my needle and my foot down. Yep, sorry. So with this machine, it does allow me to have automatic foot drop. So you will see as I start to sew, my foot goes down automatically. This is a decorative stitch, so it does a couple of stitches in a row in the spot. That locks off the stitch. And you can see every time I stop, the foot raises up slightly, so I can now rotate my work. If you don't have a machine with foot lift, you can either utilize your knee lift, or you can utilize the lever at the back of the machine where you would have to just manually lift up your foot. So I'm just stitching around this shape. Now the tighter any curves, the slower you want to go. And then every time that it's on the outside of my work, I'm lifting and rotating to come round. So we'll do a few more stitches down here. So any of the feet that I'm talking about today, if you're not sure whether you have one for your model or whether you would like to purchase one for your model, you can contact your closest store, and a full list of all those stores are on our website. That is janome.com.au. You also see that in the chat. So when I get to the end of this seam that I'm sewing, so here I'm at the end, I can now press my reverse button on my machine and it will automatically do a lock off stitch for me. So there you can see that I have just appliqued down this part of the shape here. So you would do that around all of the shapes that you have. So all of the baubles you would pick. So I've decided to do the same applique stitch on each one of my baubles. So I would continue to go around each one of my baubles with that stitch. You could choose to do different stitches if you want. And then I have chosen a second stitch to go around the top little section. So I am doing applique stitch number 10 on mine, which is a little tiny satin stitch. And I am taking this down again. I don't quite like the default with the size shapes I'm doing, so I'm going to take it down to a length of 3.5 and a width of 1.5. I only want a really tiny little satin stitch. Now if, depending on your machine, you then are going to want to be doing more of these, you can program this in and save it as what we call a favorite stitch. So if I go into my settings, I have here my favorite stitch. So depending on your model will depend on whether you have favorite stitch or not. And I'm going to save it. On the Continental M7, I do have 2 sections where I can save, but I'm going to save it up here. Now my numbers here have gone yellow, and that tells me then that I have saved this as my favorite stitch. So if I go to do a different project or go and do, say, more baubles where I'm stitching around and then want to go back and do more tops, it has automatically saved those settings for me. So I don't have to remember to write anything down and take note of that. So now I'm going to stitch around the top of the little bauble. So this is where the F foot and the F2 foot come into their own, is that they've got that little cutout through the back of them that it allows for the stitch to form and doesn't get caught. So if you look at the bottom of your A foot, you'll see that it's flat all the way, and that's to grab onto all of the feed dogs to form the stitches properly when you're seaming. But when you're appliquing, because you're stitching on top, you don't want the stitches to get caught anywhere. So I'm stitching around, I'm pivoting on the corners, and then when I get to the end, again, I'm pressing my reverse button and it will lock off. Not for that one. Oh, my lock off stitch button. Too many different buttons to remember. So, and I'll get into more about the reverse button and the lock stitch button as we decorate these baubles. So which camera am I on? This one? No, this one? Where are we going? Where are you going? So you can see here that, we'll get it in the light. I've now gone around the little top part. So once you've done all of those, so I'll pull in my other sample here. Where are we? Here. Dun, 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 dun.
I can go to that one.
We'll go to this one? We'll go to this one.
Okay.
Oh, now we're right in close. So here we have one that I have stitched all the applique on. I haven't done the little baubles yet, but that's okay. And I have started decorating the baubles on here. But what I'm going to show you first is to stitch the little hanging strings that they would hang off. So I'll show you here. So on this sample here, I have done all the same stitch. So each one of the baubles has got this little straight stitch with a little sort of little bead, like a little sort of satin stitch circle. So that one you can see it's all the same stitch on it, whereas on my other sample I have used different stitches. So depending on what your machine has, you will have a variety of different. So this is just a triple stitch. Oh, you can come back in.
Come back in. There you go.
Yeah. So here we have a triple stitch. So that's like a thicker straight stitch. We have here one which has got, can get it in camera. Some little stars. There's another one with stars, you can see that easier. So there's some little stars. This one has got a little like a step sort of design. So you can choose to either do the same or to do different stitches. So I'm going to swap over to some green thread. Now with this machine, I do need to lock off my machine to thread it. So I hit the lock button, which is the little key. If you don't have a lock button on your machine, please refer to your manual, but most of our other machines you do need to lower the foot to thread it. I'm sorry, keep the foot up to thread it, whereas the ones with the lock stitch, when you hit that button, it will put the foot in the right spot and it will open up your tension discs so that when you thread it, you are threading it properly and the thread is going to be grabbed properly. So we'll use our auto threader here, go straight through my needle, and then I can unlock my machine. So I'm going to go and choose my decorative stitch. So again, I hit on my fancy stitches there. I go and find my decorative, and I would like decorative stitch number 6. So that's this little one here, and as you can see, it's got straight stitch and then a little bauble. So I'm going to start at the top of the, if you want to, you could draw lines here. I'm just going to do it by eye. I'm just going to start at the top of the little top of the bauble. And you can see that I'm just holding my fabric really lightly. I'm just helping it to stay straight, but I'm not pushing or pulling this at all, because the machine will do the work for you. The machine, motor, feed dogs, needle, they all work together to actually sew for you. You don't need to push and pull it through. Especially with decorative stitches, if they start looking a little bit distorted, quite often that is because they have, you've been a little bit tentative and held on to the front of the fabric, or you're helping push it through. So if you're ever having an issue with decorative stitching, the best thing to do is sort of start sewing with your hands off the work, and that way you can let the machine do form the stitch properly. So as I can see, I'm just very lightly touching this, just directing it to keep it straight. So as I said, you could draw these lines in if you wanted to. Now in the project notes you will see the other thing I have done is I have put a fusible stabilizer on the back of my work. You could choose to use a tearaway, but I find with the decorative stitches I don't like having to pull that tearaway off after I've sewn, so I prefer to use a leave-in stabilizer or a cutaway stabilizer. So I'll show you the back here. Just snip off my little thread. So you can sort of just see on the back here, I've put it on a bit just so you can see where the difference is. So this is just my raw fabric, and then over here you can see that, there you go. This one is a leave-in sort of stabilizer, so it's a fusible one. So I've fused it onto the back. But if you used a tearaway, you wouldn't want to sort of like be pulling away at all these threads that are here. So that's why I like the ones that are the leave-in. So once you've set that up, so we've done our applique, we've added in our little strings. Now if you want to do these hanging sort of decorations, these ones here, you can get something like a bowl. So if I've got like a bowl, and you could lay that down and you could draw around it, and that would give you a nice sort of shape. You can get glasses and bowls of different shapes and use that for there. Or you can just freehand and draw, or you can just utilize a really freehand and just sew it. And again, on here you can see I've added like a couple of extra little strings hanging down. So once you've done that, we then want to start decorating our baubles. So the foot that I'm going to change over to is this one here, and it's called a border guide foot. So if you would like to get the part numbers or anything for this, you can contact your local store and they'll be able to help you. And there is information on the back of all of our blister pack feet that shows you how to set up the machine, attach the foot, and any other settings that you need for that particular foot. So this is the one for the 9mm. So you will see here, it has these red lines on it, and on the 9mm foot, they are exactly 9mm apart. So that allows me to line up my stitches. So if I show you here, you can see that if I've got that,
That's good.
is that a good one? You can see that the stitches fall exactly within these lines because I've lined it up. Might see it a little bit better if I put it up on this one. That one's good. So there you can see that it's set to get it there. There you go. So we've got there, you can see that so it's very easy. You don't have to make any marks. If you want to, you could draw your first line in, but once you've done your first line, you don't need to do any more. So I'm going to swap over my foot. So this is also an applique foot. It's called an FB is the code, and it has that same cutout in the back of it, so that it's really good for all your decorative stitches. So I'm going to pick a stitch here, and let's go into a quilt stitch that I liked. And with this particular model, I can scroll through on the Continental M7. I can scroll through all my stitches, or we have an inbuilt stitch card. So your model might have a top that flips up, or it might have a separate card, or they might be off the side of the machine. And they allow you then to see, or also in the back of your instruction book. So on here I can now just scroll through, and I would like to pick this one we're going to go with today. So this is quilt stitch 19 on this particular model. And I'm going to turn my pivot off because I don't need that anymore. Okay, so I'm going to stitch across here. If I wanted to, I will get my ruler, and I will, which one am I on? This one? So if you want to start with, we're going to draw in one line. I'm just using a chalk pencil, and you can see there that I've just drawn a line. So you can do that if you want to start, or you can just eyeball it. It's up to you. And I'm going to line that up with the center mark on my foot. So there's a little mark right in the center, like the other foot, the F foot for my center needle position. And I'm going to start sewing. Again, because this is a decorative stitch, it does a lock stitch at the start. And again, I'm very lightly holding my fabric, just making sure that that line that I've drawn lines up exactly with that center. So all I'm doing is adjusting left and right a little bit if I need to, but I'm letting the stitch form, and I can go fast or slow depending on your machine. We do recommend not going full speed with decorative stitches. You want them to form. And when I get to this end, so I'll just let it form that last little curl. I'm right at the end here. So now again I will go up and hit my reverse button. So with decorative stitches and your reverse button, that is the one that will stop so it'll stop where I am and tie off straight away. So for all computerized machines that have the lock and the reverse, it's the same. So I've hit my reverse button, and the machine will now lock off exactly where it is and has secured all my stitches. Where are we? Over here again. So there you can see my first row of stitches there. So now I want to go and do my second row. So I decide whether I want them, if I want it right next to each other, I line up with, which one's good?
Try that one.
Yeah. So if I want them right next to each other, I would line up with the, if I put it on this side, you might just be able to see. Just move that thread out of the way. If I want a bit more of a gap, I then line up with this second section. So you've got the first section, which is right next to the, we'll put the stitch right next to each other, and then the second one here with these lines. I can just, so you can see here what I've done is my stitch is here, right in front, and I've got these two red guidelines here. So when I put my foot down, they are sitting exactly over that previous cut row of stitches. So I now know, I'll just move this back a little bit so it starts in the right spot. And I can start sewing. And now I'm just I'm not looking where my needle is, I'm looking where these guidelines are and making sure they are running along my previous row of stitches, and then I will get that perfect gap. And when I get to the end, so I'm right at the end of the bauble now, again I will hit the reverse button and we will tie off those threads. If you have a more manual machine, you might just have to pull those threads out and tie them off yourself, but all of our computerized machines will lock off for you. So where am I? Over here again. So now you can see, get it in camera. So there you can see my two rows of stitches, and they are perfectly spaced here with a 9mm gap in the middle because I used the gap. So the other way that you can decorate these is, if I swap over back to my F foot, is you may want to do just some random little stars or shapes. So you can see here this one, I'll get it back in here. See how I've got these random little stars throughout? So if you want to decorate with just some single little motifs, I'll go back to this sample here. So I've put my F foot back on, and we'll do some down in this gold one because that'll be nice and easy to see. I'm going to choose a stitch. So I've got Q57 is what I would like. Now to scroll through, I've got lots of pages here. So the other way on the Continental M7 I can choose my stitches, because I've written down that I want Q57, is I can go into my menu here and go to Quick Stitch Select. And this allows me just to go Q57. I can check, yes, that's the right stitch that I want, and click OK, and I'm automatically at that stitch. So if you've looked in your book and in your instruction book and you see the stitch that you want, that's a very easy way to get to that stitch. So we've got here a whole heap of stitches going down, but I only want to sew one of them. So I've got two options. Either I can program it on the screen, so I can go into my programming, I can program in one, and I can program a lock stitch. So therefore it'll just sew that one repeat of the design and then lock it off for me. If I don't have a machine that I can program like this, and we just go back to regular stitching, but again I still only want to sew out one. So as I start to sew, so I'll start the machine, we'll start sewing this design. So I've started and I've just stopped, and I'll get Peter to come back to this camera up here. And this is where I'm going to use this lock stitch button. So similar to when we programmed it with one design and a lock stitch, I can utilize my lock stitch button in a similar way. I've started sewing, I'm pausing, I then will hit my lock stitch and you will see it start to flash. So now if we go back to sewing, I now can just put my foot down on the machine, on the foot pedal, and it will stitch out the design, and the machine is automatically slowing down and locking off for me. And then it is just stitched the one little shape. So if I want to stitch another one,
and it cuts at the same time.
and it cuts on this machine, yes, I have it set that it will automatically cut. You can turn that on or off depending on your model. And because this machine also has the automatic foot lift, oh, I didn't press my button, see? So now we're going to sew. So now I can press it again. Now we're going to have two little shapes. So if you've got a machine that you can program, you're better off to program it, because then you don't have to remember to press the button. So there I pressed my button after 2 little shapes, so then I've got the little 2. So you can decorate your, as you can see in the sample here, we've got different rows of stitches here. So I've got a sort of like a hanging sort of basket sort of shape, and then I've put a little tiny sort of stitch in between. Over here, rather than just going straight across, I've actually, as I've started to sew, I've pivoted a little bit and just pulled around so I get more of a arc in my stitches. And then this one here, you can put it in there, you can see that I've actually gone vertically. So I've gone down the bauble and then I've added in these extra little. So you can decorate these up as much as you want. You could add in some decorative fabric on there as well. So you could have one that's decorative fabric and one that's done with some decorative stitches and all of that. So then here's another sample that I've done up. So on this red one here, you can see I've just used a tiny little triangle stitch, and I've just stitched multiple rows down. This is similar to what we've just done with the little curly sort of arced stitch. And then over here you can see I've used 2 different stitches. That's that same little stitch with the straight and the little bauble, and then a triangular diamond sort of star pattern. So once you have finished decorating and appliquing down all of your shapes, we are then ready to quilt this. So you want to base this in your preferred method. I have used an iron-on pellon here, which is 100% polyester. It's really good. These won't crease as much as if it was a natural fibre, and they're going to wash really well because they're a placemat, so I would like them to wash well. And then I've just put a little bit of spray based on there to put my backing on. But depending on what you've got, these are really good projects for using all your scraps. And if you'd prefer to thread based or to pin based, just put your pins or your thread wherever you need. So I'm going to swap over my thread, and we're going to go for a nice sort of dark gold colour, I think. And I'm going to lock my machine. We go down through the tension discs, round the needle into the needle threader, push down with purpose. There we go. And we are threaded. So here is my work here. I need to decide what to quilt it with. On the samples that I'm doing, we have some cross hatching. Get it so it's in the light. There you go. So here you can see I've just done a very simple cross hatch design in the background. There you go. And I'll show you how to do this one because it's really easy. You don't have to mark it all up beforehand. We only have to mark our first line. This one here, I've done some, let's see if we can get it. There we go. So I've done some little tiny pebbles in like a metallic thread, so it's a little bit hard to see on camera, but I've got some little tiny pebbles that have sort of been done in a sort of a swathe sort of thing. Made me sort of think of tinsel, and then I've just done like a straight lines in random sort of widths going down. So you can quilt this up as much or as little as you want, depending on what your skill level is. So as you can see here, I've added in the free motion. I've also echoed around these, just so that they highlight and stand out a bit more.
We can take some photos of these and put them up on.
We can, yep. We'll put some more photos up showing a little bit more detail. And obviously you can see here I've got the stitches, like these ones come up at an angle, these ones go down. I've got this one here which is using, you can sort of just see, I've got like just a triple stitch going down, and then I've just put a little tiny loopy stitch. Or you can even see here my stars, I've done them in sort of like a zigzag stitch. so that it looks like sort of stars hanging over the baubles. Okay, let's get on to some quilting. So we're going to swap over to our quilting foot. So on the Continental M7 we have an AccuFeed system. So this allows us to use the foot. I need another screwdriver.
You want a screwdriver?
Bigger screwdriver.
I can do that.
I've only got my little screwdriver with me. So with the AccuFeed Flex system, it is a foot that is driven by a motor. So your normal walking foot goes up and down as you move your fabric, and it relies on the needle bar to raise the foot up and down. Whereas this one locks in the back of the machine, and it is motor driven. So these feed dogs here that you can see going up and down are actually driven by a motor that puts it in perfect sync with the bottom, the feed dogs, or you can adjust it. So if you're getting, any time you're getting fabric slippage, you can adjust the feed dogs at the top to either take more or less. Now you just, to put these on, just loosen off your needle clamp, sorry, not the foot clamp screw. Put the foot on and then tighten up so that you don't need to take the screw all the way out. And then I finger tighten it, and then I'm just going to do a tiny little tighten with the screwdriver. So with the AccuFeed Flex, I don't know if you can just see it behind here, I've got that little hook. Show you back. There you go. Can you just see it? Sort of. So I'll show you here. Here's the machine. So here's your little hook. So this hook needs to hook into the back. So I'm going to push it in, and then that's engaged. So you need to do that on all AccuFeed Flex models. Is hook that in. Then on my machine I need to choose the right stitch. So I'm going to go into the sewing applications on this model. Sewing applications are preset settings that allow you to do a whole heap of different functions, and we're going to do quilting today. So it's a little t-shirt, and that's our sewing applications. I'm going to go into our quilting menu, and I'm going to go here to straight stitch. So here, as you can see, I've programmed it to my favorite length. So for this particular machine I like 2.8, and it's just a regular straight stitch. You've also got an automatic locking one and a locking stitch one. So you can use your preferred stitch. Again, you can adjust the length depending on what you're sewing. So the other thing I need to do is turn on the AccuFeed system. So we've got this one with the 3 triangles, it looks like feed dogs on top of the bed of the machine. So I'm going to turn that, and you'll hear it click into place. It always comes up with a confirmation to make sure I do have the right foot attached. And I will be also turning on my pivot function. So what I want to do is I want to echo around these shapes here. But I want to have a nice guide somewhere on my foot where I can line up. So what we can do is we can move our needle position over. So I don't know, Peter, which one would be the best. So on here, so for all straight stitches, you will see we've got needle position. It could be a dial on your machine, it could be buttons to push up and down. This one, so I'm going to move my needle all the way over to the left hand side. So now I've got a really nice spot where I can line up to do my echo. Peter, you can see this. So now that my needle's right over into my left hand side, I can now line up the edge of my foot with this bauble that I'm going to stitch around, and it is nicely in, going to be about 1/4 of an inch or thereabouts. Get my foot in. So as I start to sew around here, you should see the feed dogs and because I've got the pivot on, I can easily rotate around this curve. And you can see these upper feed dogs grabbing, going up and down and grabbing the work and pulling it along. So I'm just, as I said before, the tighter the curve, the slower you want to go. So go around here. I've reached my little end, so I'm just going to come down this side.
Just before we go on too
Yep.
much, just can you explain about, I'll go to that one, the back, that the little clip into the back, the issue that we had just as we started.
Oh,
Just some people may have seen this on their machine.
so my foot didn't engage properly, so I had to just clip it back in again. So you'll tell when it's not clipped in, your feed dogs at the front here will sit in a very up, even more so than this. They'll be going in a really up position and they won't move when you stitch. So as long as you're engaged in the back there, you will see those feed dogs moving up and down as you stitch. So if you see here that they're moving, so if your feed dogs are not moving, it's just a matter of you need to clip that back into there.
Thank you, Kathy.
So I can stitch around here. So if you want this to be a skinnier echo or anything like that, you can then line up with a different part on your foot. So this has given me a good maybe, I'm going to say maybe a 1/2 inch. Little echo around there. So we do have various different feet as well. The Continental M7 does come with our HP2 foot, which is a scant 1/4 inch walking foot. That's quite, there we go, that's better. So if you wanted a smaller echo, so on this sample here, I've done like a 1/4 inch echo. So this one I can utilize the HP foot and line, HP2 foot and line up, and I'll get that nice scant 1/4 inch. Or if you're using your regular walking foot or your larger AccuFeed, it just might mean that you need to line up with just the inside of where the clear part of the foot is. So you can decide, depending on how big you want your echo to be, you can line it up with and then adjust your needle to the exact position. So that is doing echo quilting and moving your needle. I'm going to put my needle back into my center position, and it's really easy. Rather than having to push this button a lot, I'm just going to go default, puts it back to the default settings, or I can open up, because I had saved this as my preferred quilting stitch. I go into my favorite stitch and I select number 1 because that's got the exact settings that I like to use. So I'm going to mark up my quilt for the cross hatching. So I have got my trusty quilting ruler. Now you could use a chalk pencil or some sort of marking implement to mark this up. The chalk pencils are really good because they do just brush off or wash off eventually. But I also like to use this, which is called a hero marker, and this actually just creases the fabric. So if I set this up, I'm going to do a 45 degree. So I'm lining up my 45 degree line with my seam line of my background to my border. And I'm just going to press this in, and I'm just going to then move. Yeah, so I'll give it a really good press so you can see. You normally just have to press it once, but so you can see it on the camera. And you can see there is my crease line. I'll get it right in there. Nice amount of, there we go. So you can see there I've now got a crease line. And that means I haven't marked my fabric at all. There we go, you can see it easily there. So I haven't marked my fabric with anything. So I've got nothing that needs to be washed out or needs to be removed in any way. So I'm not damaging the fabric. You're literally just pressing in a crease. So once I've got that one line drawn, I can then go back up to my start here. Now, because I want to lock off these stitches at the end, it's up to you, depending on what you're doing, whether you manually pull up your threads and tie them off later, or whether you use a locking stitch that's available on your machine. I am going to use my little reverse button, and after I do about 3 stitches, I'm then going to hold in my reverse button and it will stitch backwards for me. Then I let go when I'm back at the start. And now I'm just going to follow, you can just see that crease line, I think.
Yeah,
so there's my
shows
crease
it well.
line there. So I'm going to just follow this crease line and stitch. So this is where if you're getting any slippage of your fabric, that you can change the amount of grab that AccuFeed Flex foot takes. When I get to the other end, I'm going to hold in my reverse button, go back a couple of stitches and then forward, and then I can lock off. So now I have got here one row. So rather than having to now mark up all of my 1 inch markings or 2 inch markings or whatever you would like to do for spacing, I can utilize this guide that we have. So it's a quilting bar guide. Let's go up to this camera. You can just see my little guide here. I'll put it up so you see. So you've got this quilting quilting bar guide. So it just pushes in the hole in the back. You may have a machine walking foot where it clips down in the back of the foot. This one, it pushes in this little hole. And I want to do 1 inch markings. So I'm utilizing the markings that are on my needle plate. So I can see across the top here I've got imperial markings. I don't know if you can't quite see them. Here, I'll show you. Let's take the plate off and you can see. Get it in the right spot.
Yep, that's good. That was really good.
Oh, here we go.
Yep.
So you can see on our needle plates, we do have markings on there that will show you. So at the top on this particular plate, I've got imperial, and in the middle here, I've got metric. So if I want my 1 inch line, I've got my 1 inch marking just there. It's got a little 1 inch. And you've also got, depending on your model, you will have different markings on the left-hand side of the needle plate, including angle markings. So you've got your markings here, plus on the front, if I can just get it in the right, on the bobbin cover here, you also have your needle position and markings here for your seams. So you've got all of those available. Very easy to use those. My needle plates back in.
Information for those is in the book? And on
Yes, so in your instruction book, you will have information on our website. We've got information about it as well. Because I've just changed my needle plate, it is asking me to confirm that I have the right plate on and the right foot. So we're very safe. We like to confirm everything. And I have now adjusted this. You just push it in and out and adjusted it so it's sitting on that 1 inch line. So now, rather than having to mark this all the way up, I can now just line up that guide with my previous row of stitching. I'm holding on to my threads. I'm going to do my little reverse. So again, I'm not watching my needle. I'm watching over here where this guide bar is. And I want it to travel along that previous row that I stitched. And I just need to make sure that I don't go over my border. And we can do a little reverse there. Cut off my threads. So then we have perfectly, which one? This one? Perfectly parallel lines that are exactly 1 inch apart. To do a cross hatch, if you wanted to, it's just a matter of utilizing your ruler again, and then we would come in at the 45-degree angle this way. And then you would draw another line here. So the only two lines is just your first ones that you have to draw. And then you have got your all your cross hatching done. You can decorate this any way you want. If you want to get in and do some free motion quilting, you can. On this particular sample, it's a little bit hard to see. I'll just get it in focus.
That's good.
I did a little meander with a loop. So it's a little sort of loop stitch. I did that just around the border. So there's no free motion quilting on the main body of this one. It's just in the border. Whereas, as I said before, on the project for the wall hanging, we did the little pebbles. Let's see if we can get There you go. Oh, that's perfect. You can see here, I just did all the little pebbles and then I echoed around the outside of the pebbles before I stitched all the lines on the background. So that's the details on how to, and then you would bind it up or face it, or on what you're doing. You could use that as a panel in a quilt and make a larger quilt from it. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming today and watching Janome Australia on Facebook Live. We might get Peter to swap back the other camera.
We will.
So I hope that this has inspired you. We're just getting set up with our cameras. I'll give you another little look. While we're waiting, we can... So you can see each one of these. I'm doing the baubles in slightly different positions with slightly different, because here's the other one for you. So I've done different baubles with a different array on the top. So thank you very much for watching our Janome Australia Facebook Live. We hope we've inspired you to decorate your home, make some gifts for this Christmas period. If you'd like more information, the project sheet and a recording when we get it finished will go onto our Facebook page, onto our
It'll be on
Facebook and YouTube and our website, so janome.com.au. And you can also contact your local Janome dealer, retailer, and a full list of those is available on our website as well. So thank you very much for joining us today.